we got another video for you guys. I'm ready to get right into it. I'll be right here. Let's get it. Sorry, wrong button. There we go.
About to deliver their long-awaited Fantastic Four reboot, and it's one of my most anticipated films of the summer. I've been looking forward to this movie since Disney acquired Fox back in 2019, and Kevin Feige promised the Fantastic Four would be joining the MCU. In just a few short weeks, it'll finally be here, and everything we've seen about the film so far has been very promising. I love the vibe they're going for. It acknowledges the inherent silliness of the characters, and there's a lot of joking between the team, but at the same time, it takes the stakes seriously. That moment where Reed tells the press he's not sure if they'll be able to save the day this time is really powerful.
Are we safe? I don't know.
I love all the actors they've cast, and from what we've seen in the trailers, they all seem well suited to their roles and seem to have strong chemistry. Director Matt Shakman has made the right call, leaning heavily on the idea of family. The retro-futuristic 60s setting sets apart from the other Fantastic Four movies and all the other MCU movies, and it also just feels like the right setting for the Fantastic Four. The characters were created in the 60s, and they're very much a product of their time. This alternate universe 60s aesthetic gives First Steps its own distinctive visual style. It's clearly not adhering to the cookie-cutter Marvel formula. It's doing its own thing. The MCU's Fantastic Four reboot seemingly has everything going for it. Now all they have to do is deliver a good movie and it'll be a home run. But apparently that's a lot easier said than done. Unlike the other flagship superheroes, the Fantastic Four have always had a rough go of it on the big screen. There have been both great Superman movies and terrible Superman movies, great Batman movies and terrible Batman movies, great Spider-Man movies and terrible Spider-Man movies, but there's never been a truly great Fantastic Four movie. The first Fantastic Four movie wasn't even released, and based on the clips that are available, it's probably for the best that it was never officially released. It was produced on the cheap as a Roger Corman B-movie just to hold on to the rights, and it looks like a movie that was born out of a legal obligation rather than a filmmaker's passion for their vision. Frankly, the subsequent, more legit Fantastic Four movies that actually got a theatrical release haven't been much better. But why is it so hard to make a great or even halfway decent Fantastic Four movie? Before the MCU takes its own crack at the property, let's take a look back on the last 3 attempts to adapt these characters for the big screen, to try to figure out how the hell they turned out so badly.
It was a good movie though. It's one of the best.
I have to admit, I kinda love the 2005 Fantastic Four film. There's a healthy amount of nostalgia clouding my judgment. I was 7 years old when it came out, and the Fantastic Four were some of my favourite Marvel characters, so I was just happy to see them in a movie at all. I played the tie-in PS2 game obsessively, and a Michael Chiklis Thing action figure was one of my most prized possessions.
It's clobbering time!
It's catchy, right?
But rewatching it now, I can see plenty of flaws I couldn't see as a bright-eyed little 7-year-old. Superhero movies were much less common back in 2005. You'd get one a year, 2 max, instead of 1 a month. They were a lot less quote-unquote comic booky, because mainstream audiences weren't accustomed to it. So they would simplify the lore and avoid more outlandish concepts like the Interdimensional Council of Reeds. I think the film does a good job of conveying the bare bones of the origin story for audiences who are unfamiliar with it, and it does so nice and economically. By the 15-minute mark, they've got their powers and they're back on Earth, ready to become superheroes. There's usually a lot of dilly-dally in these superhero origin movies. They sometimes don't get their powers until the midpoint, so I appreciate Fantastic Four cutting right to the chase. The cast are solid. Owen Grufford captures Reed Richards' nerdiness, his social awkwardness, and his level-headed leadership. Jessica Alba plays Sue Storm perfectly as the straight woman rolling her eyes at the men around her. Chris Evans has a lot of fun with Johnny's arrogance and womanizing. And Michael Chiklis captures Ben Grimm's deep underlying sadness. They've mostly got the right dynamics too. Grufford and Chiklis nail Reed and Ben's lifelong friendship. Chiklis and Evans nail Ben and Johnny's banter. And Evans and Alba nail Sue and Johnny's sibling bickering. The only somewhat weak link is that Grufford and Alba don't have much romantic chemistry. Certainly not enough to do justice to one of Marvel Comics' most important power couples. But for the most part, director Tim Story gets the team dynamic right. He takes plenty of time to build out their relationships. Too many superhero movies these days are so plot heavy that you have no time to see the characters in their element, living their daily lives, so you don't really get a sense of who they are. It can be seen every now and then, like the party scene in Age of Ultron, but not nearly enough. That's the meat and potatoes of the comics, the reason comic book readers get so endeared to these characters. Story recognized that and put a ton of that stuff in Fantastic Four. We see Reed and Sue working in the lab, Johnny playing pranks on Ben, and the characters just generally hanging out together as they try to stay out of the public eye. The movie botches Dr. Doom and makes him some douchey American businessman. There's a couple of mentions of Latveria, but that's not part of his character at all. In the comics, Doom masters both science and sorcery to become the ultimate supervillain. But in this movie, he's basically just Emperor Palpatine, blasting lightning out of his fingers and laughing maniacally. He finally dons the familiar garb in the third act, and it's much more faithful than the other live-action Doom would be, which we'll get to. The costume designer's got the green cloak just right, but the mask looks a bit silly, especially since you can see around his eyes. Doom is supposed to look terrifying, but here he just looks like a guy in a Halloween costume. I think Chiklis's Practical Thing costume still looks better than the subsequent CG efforts, although I do love the MCU design with the prominent brow ripped straight from Jack Kirby's imagination. It's really impressive how they managed to bury Chiklis in makeup and prosthetics without restricting his ability to act. He still has access to all his facial muscles. There is some shaky CGI when they go through the cosmic storm, but it was 2005, so that's forgivable. The Human Torch CGI is pretty damn good, considering how hard it is to make CG fire and explosions look real. Culturally, Fantastic Four is very 2000s, which dates it instantly and makes me even more relieved that the new one is set in an alternate 60s. It's got Sum 41 and Gabbin on the soundtrack, so the sound is very much of its time. And the male filmmakers couldn't help themselves from throwing in a gag where Sue's invisibility wears off while she's naked on a crowded street. She doesn't even need to be invisible for that scene. She does it to get through the crowd, but Reed and Johnny get through the same crowd in the same amount of time, no invisibility required. I think someone behind the scenes just wanted to get Jessica Alba to strip. Outside of its chauvinism, the script follows very predictable beats. The team come together, then they fall out over petty disagreements, then they make up again. The interpersonal conflicts feel very manufactured. It only takes an openly manipulative 5-minute conversation with Doom for Ben to decide he hates his childhood best friend. And I despised the choice to force a love triangle between Reed, Sue, and Victor, especially since the movie does nothing with it because Sue isn't even interested in Victor. That love triangle isn't in any of the comics, at least none of the ones I've read, but for some reason it's been included in both film versions. The 2005 movie has a great score by John Ottman, full of rousing action-adventure music with catchy themes and memorable motifs. Bum 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 bum. And Tim Story gets the film's tone right. It's a fun, light-hearted romp that doesn't take itself too seriously. Johnny! Stylistically, it's pretty uninspired. It looks like any other action movie from the aughts. The heroes just happen to have superpowers. It's missing the visual flair of a Sam Raimi or an Ang Lee. Say what you will about Ang Lee's Hulk movie and its goofy panel-to-panel scene transitions, but at least he tried to give it the vibrant visual luster of a comic book. Overall, I don't think Fantastic Four 05 is as bad as its reputation or its Rotten Tomatoes score would suggest, but it's still a far cry from being a successful, satisfying adaptation of Marvel's first family.
Yeah, I almost forgot about this one.
Despite being mostly panned by critics, Fantastic Four 05 was a big enough hit at the box office to secure a sequel, Rise of the Silver Surfer. The sequel has a shorter runtime than the first by about 10 minutes, but it's much bigger in scope. It has a globe-trotting plot, multiple villains, and higher stakes. The first movie is largely confined to the Baxter Building, with a brief detour to Doom's boardroom for the climactic fight. It's very contained, but Rise of the Silver Surfer jumps all over the world and destroys a bunch of landmarks, Michael Bay style. It sends these quintessential New York heroes to London and Shanghai. The sequel maintains the light tone from the first one. Most sequels follow the Empire Strikes Back model of going a lot darker, and Rise of the Silver Surfer definitely has its share of darker moments. But it almost feels like a Fantastic Four sitcom at times. Ben and Johnny take shy, awkward Reed out clubbing for an impromptu bachelor party, and he ends up having the time of his life. And there's yet another gag designed to get Jessica Alba naked when Johnny accidentally transfers his powers to Sue and she burns all her clothes off. She says, "Why does this always happen to me?" Because Hollywood is run by perverts, Sue, that's why. Again, one of the biggest strengths is letting the characters breathe and go through their everyday routine. We see Reed and Sue planning their wedding, Johnny cracking jokes about Ben's sex life, Sue doing the Fantastic Four's books. One of the most controversial decisions in this movie was to depict Galactus as a cloud. I'm so glad they're being faithful to the comics and actually making him a big purple guy in the new one. But Rise of the Silver Surfer makes up for its crappy Galactus with a great Silver Surfer. Lawrence Fishburne and Doug Jones bring the appropriate otherworldly mystique to Norrin Radd. Fishburne delivers his lines with Shakespearean gravitas, and Jones nails the sleek body language as he effortlessly glides around on the surfboard. The film makes the surfer sympathetic. The emotional core of the story is that while the government want to destroy him, Sue sees the good in him and wants to understand him. And the Silver Surfer CGI looks amazing. It's an absolutely perfect live-action translation of this surreal comic book character. Every little speckle of reflection is spot on. Somehow the CG Surfer from 2007 looks better than the MCU version today, although granted the VFX in that trailer footage might be incomplete. I didn't think it was necessary to bring Doom back for the sequel. I know they teased his return in the first film's mid-credits scene, but you've already got two heavy-hitter villains with Galactus and the Silver Surfer. I can understand if Doom was one of the best parts of the first movie, so they wanted to bring him back for fan service like Killmonger and Wakanda Forever. But this is a really lame take on Doom. He was one of the worst parts of the first movie. The Doom mask at least looks a lot better in the sequel, but even that's undermined by putting him on the Silver Surfer's surfboard and making him look like a goofball. And while we're on the topic of the cast, I loved seeing the late great Andre Braugher as a military bureaucrat. It was like seeing Captain Holt in the Marvel Universe. I love that they included the Fantastic-Car in the third act. Comic book films were finally starting to ease into more comic booky concepts. We still had X-Men dressed in black leather.
What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
But we also had movies like 300 and Sin City designed to look like moving comic books. But it still wasn't leaning into the source material enough. It was still playing it too safe, conceptually and stylistically. They still wouldn't let Galactus be Galactus. The cast had signed a 3-movie deal, and the filmmakers had a lot of exciting ideas for a threequel, involving Nova, Franklin Richards, Black Panther, the Inhumans, the Skrulls, the Puppet Master, Annihilus, and the Negative Zone. But since Rise of the Silver Surfer cost more and made less than the first one, a third film was never greenlit, so Tim Story's Fantastic Four series would remain a duology. And there's a lot of good stuff in those two movies. The light-hearted tone is perfect for these characters, and we get to spend plenty of time with the team, just hanging out as a family. But there's a lot of downsides that hold them back from being for the Fantastic Four what the Dark Knight was for Batman, or Spider-Man 2 was for Spidey. Their portrayal of Doctor Doom is really lame, I don't buy Reed and Sue's relationship, and the films aren't comic booky enough. The emotions of Fantastic Four stories need to be grounded, but the actual plots need to lean into crazy, high-flying, hard sci-fi. These movies try too hard to be palatable to mainstream audiences, and it's clearly a detriment because mainstream audiences didn't like them that much. In 2009, just 2 years after Rise of the Silver Surfer underperformed at the box office, 20th Century Fox announced its plans to reboot the Fantastic Four franchise. 6 years later, after going through many script drafts and iterations, they managed to shit out the worst Fantastic Four movie imaginable. Fant4stic isn't just the worst Fantastic Four film by far, it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. The first two Fantastic Fours were flawed but fun, but Fant4stic is a fundamental misunderstanding of the source material. After Batman Begins was hailed as a game changer, every studio in Hollywood decided that every single franchise needed a grim, gritty, grounded, Nolan-style reboot. And that style worked beautifully for some properties. James Bond, Judge Dredd, The Punisher, Wolverine, RoboCop, but it's not the right style for every IP. You couldn't do a dark, gritty version of Thomas the Tank Engine, for example. So this relentless quest to give every franchise a Nolan makeover resulted in some really misguided interpretations of beloved IPs. Star Trek is a hopeful, humanistic look at the future driven by love and optimism. We didn't need the gritty, post-9/11 Star Trek movie about terrorism. This happened with a lot of bright, cheery, optimistic superheroes. They gave Superman the Boy Scout a dark, gritty reboot. They gave your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man a dark, gritty reboot. And they gave the Fantastic Four, the team with a stretchy guy and a rock monster and a pair of trunks, a dark, gritty reboot. When I first watched Fant4stic as a cynical teenager, I fucking hated it. I almost turned it off, it made me angry to watch it. As a lifelong Fantastic Four fanboy, I felt personally insulted. Watching it today as a grown man, I don't find it quite as egregious. There are moments, very rare moments, that show a bit of promise. But no matter how you spin it, it is a really bad movie. Almost all the lead characters are miscast. Miles Teller doesn't have the charm to be an action hero. He was great in Top Gun Maverick, but that character was a petulant brat. It was Tom Cruise who brought the charm. Kate Mara looks like she'd rather be anywhere else than in this movie, and I can't really blame her. And Jamie Bell was the wrong choice for Ben Grimm. I just don't buy Billy Elliot as this New York street tough. Michael B. Jordan is the only one who's right for his role, and he's way too good for this movie. The biggest problem is with the tone. This film was a mess behind the scenes, so the end product product is a monstrous Franken movie. Fox brought in Josh Trank on the heels of his breakout movie Chronicle, and Trank, not being much of a Fantastic Four fan, decided it would be a good idea to retell their origin story as a Cronenbergian body horror film. We'll probably never get to see that version, but the rumors swirling around the internet are that it's somehow even worse than the movie we ended up getting. Naturally, Fox got cold feet when he started turning their big superhero tentpole into Videodrome, so the studio took it out of his hands and reshot as much as they could afford to. That's why half the film feels like the Naked Lunch version of Fantastic Four, and the other half feels like a generic attempt to duplicate the MCU formula. It's also why Kate Mara is wearing a really bad wig in a bunch of her scenes. Honestly, I don't think either of these versions of the film would have worked. A body horror reimagining of the Fantastic Four just sounds horrible. If you want to do something that radical, just Rebel Moon it and slap a different name on it to make it technically original. Don't desecrate the good name of the OGs. And a generic, amiable puff piece imitating what worked in other superhero films doesn't do anyone any good either. Tonal discrepancies and obvious reshoots aside, Fan Four Stick is much slower than the previous version. They don't get exposed to cosmic radiation until the 45-minute mark. It took them all of 10 minutes to get their powers in the original, but there's a lot of faffing around in the reboot. They don't actually come together as a team with a common goal until there's like 20 minutes left. I thought it was a cool choice to show how Reed and Ben became friends as kids in the prologue, but the movie doesn't maintain its focus on their friendship. When Reed goes to work at the Baxter Foundation, he doesn't talk to Ben for months until he drunk dials him in the middle of the night and invites him to another dimension where his life is ruined. And when Ben comes back from that dimension as an orange rock monster, Reed doesn't talk to him for a year while he's recruited by the US military to become a walking, talking missile. They at least made Victor Von Doom a native Latvian and Reed's college rival in this version. But the faithfulness ends there. He's still a total douchebag, and his rivalry with Reed still mostly manifests in him harassing Sue. Victor vanishes for most of the movie and doesn't come back until the third act, where his final Doctor Doom form looks absolutely absurd. He looks like a walking crash test dummy. In fact, most of the character designs in this movie are dog shit. The Thing somehow looks even sillier without his blue shorts. Who thought it was a good idea to put a naked, dickless Thing in this movie? And the Human Torch CGI looks much worse than the Chris Evans version. They made him look like the fire people from Elemental. The whole story of the military individually turning the heroes into weapons is just boring, and it takes away the best part of these characters, their team dynamic. I kinda like the idea they're going for at the end of the rushed final battle, where none of the characters can defeat Doom on their own, but if they combine their powers as a team, they can save the day. But it feels totally unearned because it didn't build them up as a team the way the previous films did. Fan Four Stick is a complete failure from top to bottom. It's horribly paced, the tone is the polar opposite of what it should be, and it's about a 50-50 split of a maniacal filmmaker's misguided vision and a meddling studio's attempts to polish a very expensive turd. The MCU's Fantastic Four film could just be 2 hours of Pedro Pascal and Vanessa Kirby watching paint dry, and it would still be better than this.
Gotta say, it's fantastic.
Say that again?
It's fantastic.
At the start of this video, I said there's never been a truly great Fantastic Four film, and that's not strictly true. There is an absolute cinematic masterpiece out there that's a Fantastic Four movie in all but name. You know what I'm gonna say, the greatest Fantastic Four movie ever made is The Incredibles. The same way Thor Ragnarok is the best He-Man movie ever made, and Galaxy Quest is one of the best Star Trek movies ever made. The Incredibles might not be an official Fantastic Four movie, but it captured the comic book's colourful characters, sly self-awareness, and heartwarming focus on family a lot better than any of the official adaptations. The tone of The Incredibles is exactly the tone a Fantastic Four movie should have. A big, fun, lively superhero adventure with a lot of humour, but also a lot of emotion and sincerity. Above all, Fantastic Four is a story about family. Sue and Johnny are the only two who are actually related, but Reed and Ben grew up together and are practically brothers, and Reed and Sue end up getting married and having kids. None of the previous Fantastic Four movies have gotten the family aspect down pat. The closest they've gotten is portraying the Fantastic Four as a group of close friends like the Scooby Gang. But The Incredibles is as much a family sitcom as it is a superhero actioner. From Bob and Helen's marital struggles to Dash's rebelliousness and Violet's teen angst, The Incredibles nails the Parr family's dynamics. In The Incredibles, the characters come first and the action scenes are just the gravy on top. In many cases, the action is there to complement quieter character moments, like when Bob and Helen are arguing about the quickest route to the final battle.
The robot's in the financial district. Which exit do I take?
Traction Avenue.
That'll take me downtown. I take 7, don't I?
Don't take 7!
Great! We missed it!
You asked me how to get there and I told you. Exit attraction.
That'll take me downtown!
The Incredibles balances the comedy, earnestness, and escapist entertainment that a Fantastic Four movie needs, better than any of the actual Fantastic Four movies. And it mixes spectacle and sentimentality into a heartwarming story about a family of 4 superheroes more effectively than any of the actual Fantastic Four movies. The MCU has been very hit and miss since Endgame, and history shows that it's almost impossible to make a good Fantastic Four movie. But I still have high hopes for First Steps. The trailers are focusing on all the right things. The bright, colourful compositions, the retro 60s visuals, the light-hearted tone that knows when to take things seriously, and portraying this group as more of a tight-knit family than a superhero team. Matt Shakman previously directed WandaVision, so we know he prioritizes emotional storytelling over superhero spectacle, and he can get audiences to care about these goofy comic book creations as real human beings. It's natural to be a bit skeptical after being subjected to Naked Dickless Thing and Galactus as a cloud. I think we're finally about to see Marvel's first family brought to the big screen with the heart, humor, passion, and ingenuity they deserve. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe.
Alright, I have no words.